Hello, this is Dr. Grande. Today's question asks if I can analyze the mental health and personality factors that may be at work in the life and death of Pablo Escobar. Just a reminder, I'm not diagnosing anybody in this video, only speculating about what could be happening in a situation like this. If you enjoyed this video, please like it, subscribe to my channel, and consider supporting me on Patreon. I'll put the link to Patreon in the description for this video. So first I'll look at the background of Pablo Escobar. I'll talk about the mental health and personality factors. I'll talk about why Escobar didn't serve out his prison sentence and why he didn't attempt to retire. And I'll also talk about the issue of the so-called cocaine hippos. Pablo Escobar was born in Colombia on December 1, 1949. He was raised in the city of Medellin. His father was a farmer and his mother was a school teacher. Escobar started committing crimes at a young age, including car theft, stealing cigarettes, and selling counterfeit lottery tickets. In his early and mid-20s, he worked as a bodyguard and a kidnapper. Escobar started a drug trade business in the early 70s. He co-founded the Medellin cartel along with 6 other criminals. He bought airplanes and started transporting cocaine from Colombia to Panama, but eventually expanded his services to many other countries. In 1976, he was arrested for possessing drugs. He was able to get the charges dropped by bribing police officers. That same year, he would get married to a 15-year-old. Eventually, they would have 2 children. Escobar noticed that the demand for cocaine was dramatically increasing, especially in the United States, so he configured his distribution network to meet that demand. One of his traffickers bought most of the land on an island in the Bahamas and built a refrigerated warehouse in which cocaine could be stored. This became a central component in the route that Escobar would use to get the cocaine to the U.S. It is believed that Escobar was behind the attack of the Colombian Supreme Court in 1985, which was carried out by left-wing guerrillas. He was also thought to be responsible for the destruction of commercial aircraft in 1989. This resulted in 107 deaths. Escobar bought an estate 200 miles northwest of Bogota, Colombia. The estate was almost 8 square miles. It had a private airport, kart racing track, a bullfighting ring, and a zoo with many different types of animals, including elephants, giraffes, antelopes, and hippopotamuses. At the height of the cartel's power, it was earning about $70 million a day. In addition to transporting cocaine to the United States, the cartel also transported drugs to many other countries, as I mentioned, including Venezuela, Spain, the Dominican Republic, and Mexico. The cartel would eventually control 80% of the global cocaine market. It is believed that Escobar was the wealthiest criminal in history, with his net worth approaching $30 billion. Escobar had a fairly straightforward strategy for successfully moving drugs and avoiding prosecution. He would bribe the police, judges, politicians, really anybody he needed to. If that didn't work, he would have people murdered. This policy was referred to as silver or lead. So in a sense, a low-speed solution, handing people money, and a high-speed solution, sending bullets their way. He also had the help of many poor residents in various cities in Colombia, including Medellin. He was a hero to the poor. Escobar appeared exceedingly generous to them. He built schools, football fields, churches, hospitals, and would give money directly to residents. People all throughout Colombia, but especially in Medellin, would provide assistance to Escobar by directly helping him, like giving him information and not giving information to the police. Escobar's excessive involvement in homicides eventually attracted the anger of the government, especially when he had a Colombian presidential candidate assassinated. He negotiated a deal with the government that had a few components. He would stop committing crimes and surrender. His sentence would be just 5 years, and he would be treated well when he was incarcerated, and he would not be extradited to the United States. This was really his biggest concern. He was worried because he knew if he went to the United States, he would likely spend the rest of his life in prison, and there would be no way to get out. The government built a luxury prison specifically for Escobar, and he went there to serve his 5-year sentence. The prison had amenities rarely seen in other correctional facilities: jacuzzi, soccer field, giant dollhouse, a bar, and a waterfall. Apparently, this wasn't good enough for Escobar. He was still running the Medellin cartel from inside the prison, and he murdered 4 of his lieutenants in the facility. Therefore, the government canceled the deal and was going to move him to a normal prison in July of 1992. Escobar escaped before they could move him. Someone tipped him off in advance of the move. Not surprisingly, getting out of the prison was pretty easy considering he had a lot of input in how it was constructed, and of course he had assistants all over the place. A rival cartel and another group of Escobar's enemies started operations against the Medellin cartel, killing hundreds of Escobar's associates and destroying many of the cartel's assets. In December 1993, about 16 months after Escobar escaped, he was tracked down by the authorities. He had stayed on the phone with his son long enough for the authorities to track the signal. When they moved in, he fled across the rooftops of attached housing structures, but they would shoot him in the torso and the leg. The shot that killed him was in the ear. It's not clear whether the authorities fired that shot or it was self-inflicted. Now moving to the mental health and personality factors. I'm not aware of any mental health records for Pablo Escobar. I imagine receiving therapy was not a top priority for him. Many people believed he was psychopathic and narcissistic. Let's go through some of Escobar's characteristics. Escobar was ruthless. During his criminal career, he was responsible for about 3,000 to 4,000 deaths. No one in Colombia was safe from Escobar. Many of his victims were tortured as well. He has been described as manipulative. He was able to convince people that he had their best interest in mind. He had superficial charm. His wife referred to him at one time as affectionate, sweet, compassionate, and a great lover, but later her opinion of him would become markedly more negative. Toward the end of his career, in particular, he had become quite paranoid, although there were hundreds of people trying to kill him, so that kind of makes sense. Escobar tracked media coverage about him, including every wanted poster that had been issued against him in Colombia. Escobar was motivated, ambitious, and he wanted power. He even tried politics at one point in his career, thinking that people would be okay with a politician who also ran a drug cartel. He allegedly valued his family. Ultimately, talking to his son is what led to his downfall. But I'm not really convinced he really did value his family. He could have simply served his time in prison and then spent time with them. So what was really in their best interest? I think he really was looking out for himself pretty much all the time. His behavior does seem to align with many of the characteristics associated with antisocial and narcissistic personality pathology. Now, looking at his personality profile, we see somebody who's high in openness to experience. He experienced emotions intensely, and he appreciated art. We see mid-range conscientiousness. He ran a large business, but he also acted impulsively at times. We see above-average extroversion. He was assertive and sensation-seeking, although he certainly didn't seem friendly and outgoing some of the time. His level of agreeableness was low. He was distrusting, not modest, and he wanted to appear altruistic, but I don't think he really was, because ultimately he hurt the people he claimed to be helping. And his level of neuroticism was above average. He was angry, he had difficulty resisting temptations, and he was emotionally reactive. So there are a few questions here that come up in terms of Escobar's behavior, especially toward the end of his criminal career. The first one is, why didn't he just stay in that prison? Of the many strange components of that deal he made to go to prison was the fact that when he was done serving his time, he was able to keep all of his money. He could have walked out of prison in 5 years with billions of dollars, and that 5 years wouldn't have been so bad because it was a luxury prison. The narcissism and psychopathy that helped him to get powerful in the first place would not just go away when he achieved his goal. He couldn't resist criminality. He needed to feel important. The other question, which is similar, is why not retire? So even if he didn't want to serve out a sentence, he could have just run away. He was exceedingly wealthy long before he was notorious. Why not just get out, take the money, and run? I think the same issue of personality is still at work here. To run away would not satisfy the narcissism. The other possibility is that he just couldn't simply leave. There's a theory that Escobar could not just go into hiding. He couldn't just take his $30 billion or some portion of that and run away and never be seen again, because he had murdered thousands of people. There were a lot of people looking for him, many of them criminals who would not be too concerned about following the law. No matter how much he paid someone, some organization, or some government to protect him, eventually, when they had his money, they would betray him. I'm kind of torn on this theory. We're talking about billions of dollars. I think he could have found some group to protect him, but he would have had to make those arrangements prior to becoming extremely notorious. I think he just did too much. He went too far, and there was really no place for him to go. The last thing I want to talk about is what happened with the hippopotamuses, the so-called cocaine hippos. After Escobar was killed, nobody wanted to go through the effort and expense of relocating his hippos or putting them in a zoo. Escobar originally bought 4 hippopotamuses. Due to reproduction, there were 16 by 2007. By 2020, there were about 80. The population will continue to grow at a rate of about 6% per year. The hippos have no natural predators. They have killed livestock, and there are concerns that people will be attacked. This may sound unusual, but hippos are the most dangerous large land mammal in the world. They kill 500 people a year in Africa. The hippos have been described as terrorizing the communities. In a sense, maybe they're trying to live up to Escobar's legacy. Maybe this was Escobar's plan the entire time. Cocaine distribution, bribery, murder. Then he is killed. People thought his reign of terror was over. Then, surprise, attack hippos. The threat that everyone should see coming due to the hippo's massive size, but never do. Those are my thoughts on Pablo Escobar. Please put any opinions and thoughts in the comment section. They always generate an interesting dialogue. As always, I hope you found my analysis on this topic to be interesting. Thanks for watching.